Carlos Nelson with Cascade Media Group and the Kansas City Business Association. And today we have one of my friends and I would say a titan in the development industry here in Kansas City. When I was off camera, I was telling Don, I hate to have to give him all of these props, but they are justly due. This man has done premier developments in the Black community over the last 30 years, and he's still going strong. Mr. Don Maxwell. How are you doing today, Don?
I'm fine, Carlos. I'm glad to be here with you, brother.
I'm glad for you to be here. What I want to do is let's go back and let's talk about your rise in the construction and the development field. Not only in that, some of the other things that you have participated to grow our community in numerous ways, not just in the development, and talk about some of the mentors that help you achieve some of the goals that you've achieved.
Okay, I've been very blessed to have a number of mentors, people that have helped me along the way. Let me start my career at Wayne Manor. I started my career as a organizer for welfare rights. I was organizing welfare recipients all over the city, and my office was based across the street from Wayne Manor. I had always been poor coming from my community, but I saw another level of poverty in many instances when I started with welfare rights. From there, I organized welfare groups.
Sorry for the introduction. Give them a timeline when all this was going on.
This is 1969. In 1969, we started a group. The group was already organized. They hired me to help them organize, but it was the welfare group in Wayne Manor. Then it was T.B. Watkins, Shoto, Riverview, West Side Housing. And we ended up having a group, a welfare rights group in South Kansas City. I had the opportunity to work on the legislation for food stamps, work with legal aid that assisted us in working with individuals that had been tossed off welfare, trying to get on welfare, needing housing, needing emergency assistance. But the one thing that helped me a lot was the fact that we needed to do something a little bit different. We needed to create jobs. There were no jobs, and the one thing that I could see that was going to help folks was the creation of businesses and employment opportunities for people from our community. Creating jobs we needed to create the jobs in our own community. That led me to serving on the board of directors of BEU, working with BEU. We had a group called Inner City Foundation. Inner City Foundation was getting money from the Office of Economic Opportunity to start enterprises. But the group had been anointed and established by BEU. The welfare mothers, especially Doretta Henderson, she said, I don't know nothing about business. And you're young, and I was like 23 years old. Maybe you can sit on this board and help us create some business opportunity. I had been in business all my life as a youth entrepreneur, everything from shining shoes, owning apartment buildings, flipping housing, and doing other unsundry things that brothers do off the street that become income. So with that start, working with people that you know, like Bernard Powell, Vernon Thompson, So I think so, Adolphus Mooney, Ron Mooney's restaurant, working with an ensemble of community representatives, Isoline Clark, who was running the Oak Park Neighborhood Association, Mr. Watts, Jimmy Watts' father. He was a very difficult person to deal with. Mr. Watts, he wanted to slap me upside the head like he slapped Jimmy upside the head sometimes. But these are folk that were on the ladder as I started to look at how we would do things. Curtis McClinton was extremely important because Curtis had been able to get the city to support him in his efforts. There, we were working with Jim Brown, who had created the whole thing called Black Economic Union. It was a good idea. Jim Brown thought that, let me go into all the cities that have national football teams, and let me talk to those Black players about taking some of the money they're making and reinvesting it in the community. That was what he was trying to do. Now, Curtis McClinton was the most successful of all of them because BEU is the only organization of those BEUs, of those Black economic unions that were established. They're the only ones that are still going.
There's one other one going.
What's that now?
There's one other one going. I didn't forgot what city. I think it was in Cleveland, but you're right. All of them, I think it was 8 of them, and there's only 2 left.
Okay, well, had the opportunity to sit there as a youth and see where they were trying to go. Now, the first deals we got into, we opened up a service station called Safari Oil, and we had 15 people on our board, and we were trying to manage 2 people, and we weren't doing a very good job with that. Then we had a printing company we established on 31st in Indiana, a Rapid Press it was called. We had 3 employees there, and the director decided to quit. He took all of our printing equipment, put it in the back of a van, and moved to California and left us without a company. Then we opened up Twin City Businessmen Accounting, which was an accounting firm. We had 2 employees there trying to do bookkeeping and accounting. That didn't work very well. Our accountant got mad and quit, and then we were out of business. All we had was some desks and some file cabinets. So all of a sudden it dawned on me, I know as much about business development as these proteges that I'm working with, and became the chairman. Matter of fact, your friend Vernon Thompson nominated me to be the chairman of the community of the new, we quit BEU and started another organization since we had money. And we became the Community Development Corporation of Kansas City instead of the Black Economic Union Community Development Corporation. And that's where our development started. First big deal we had, the big deal that got away from us was we found a brother that had invented a thing called fiberglass bathtubs. He had the patent on manufacturing fiberglass bathtubs. We tried to make it work. We couldn't enter the market because we didn't know anybody. We couldn't work with the unions, couldn't work with the major suppliers, nor could we work with the contractors. Consequently, after struggling with that for about 3 years, we sold the patent. And we were able to, when we sold the patent, introduce the gentleman that had invented the bathtub. We introduced him and got him a contract, like $50,000 a year, that went for like 10 years. He was happy and we were happy too, because we had not been able to pay him the kind of money he wanted. But our first successful venture was the acquisition of a building at 1026 Forest. That became our office building, first office building we had. And there we were able to rent space, put our offices there, rent space to other nonprofit organizations throughout the Kansas City area. From the office complex, we got involved with a group, with a business, a gentleman by the name of Willie Wesley. Willie Wesley was an engineer that was working at Honeywell. Willie Wesley came to us and he had an idea about plastic molding injection, but he didn't have any money. So we were able to buy a building. We were able to buy some used equipment, and we started a thing called Alpha Plastics, plastic molding injection plant. And there we were very successful in getting, I think we must have had about 300 molds. And our business was repeat business. We might have a mold for Hallmark cards to make a particular product. When they run out of that product and they're manufacturing, they call us back. We make additional parts or pieces for them. We did that, and I think you may have a slide on Alpha.
Tell me this, interrupting you, did you do, because I was interested in that when that took place, when the gentleman with the plastic company, and I thought it was an excellent opportunity for bottling and things like that. But what I wanted to know, did you ever secure the James Lemonade contract? Because they came out with the plastic bottles.
Now, they came out later. This was very early on. This would have been in 1907. Let's see, that's been about 1974, 75, sometime.
I thought it was 79, but around there. But all right.
But that's what we started. Now, Alpha was very successful. We went on to expand, created about 35 jobs at Alpha. Willie was willing to take people who had not necessarily finished school and offer them the opportunity right there in the plant to get a GED, so that they might move, as our company grew, they might be able to go up the ladder, the corporate ladder inside the company. From there, we were able to do our next big venture was Builders Block Company, where we started manufacturing cement blocks. We bought a company that was located at 18th and Prospect. We were able to go to the Office of Economic Opportunity and pick up about $3 million and expand that opportunity, where we built a brand new plant at 12th Street Terrace and Norton. We built the most modern cement block manufacturing plant in the country at the time. We used a system called Trailer Rail, which was brand new. Human hands never had to touch the blocks. We took our old crew over there, and they were amazed because they had been basically making blocks almost by hand. They were astonished that all they had to do was run the machine. Very successful with Builders Block. Held on to Builders Block for a number of years. After almost 20 years, we sold the company to another group. Took those funds and reinvested the funds in doing additional or new enterprises. Our next big industrial complex, our next big industrial project was the acquisition of a company called Cake Box. Cake Box was a large specialty bakery that it was a Jewish bakery, and we had 7 franchises in all the shopping centers throughout Kansas City, as well as a major outlet at the plant itself, which was located on Van Brunt. Got in trouble with the project later because we lost a contract with Milgram's. We had a special bakery section in all the Milgram stores. When Milgram started to slide, our company started to slide. We ended up selling it to a gentleman that had been doing all our marketing, and he continued for a period of time, but ultimately the loss of the Milgram's contract was the death of Cake Box. Then we got into another venture called Newspaper Electronics. There we were manufacturing news editing computers. We had a gentleman, a young man that was working for me by the name of Kelvin Perry. Kelvin had played a major role in the development of that project. And later, when we sold it, Kelvin went with Newspaper Electronics and ultimately became the owner of Newspaper Electronics. We sold to an Australian firm that was dependent upon our news editing computers, but we were manufacturing computers for newspapers all across the country. Later, we got involved in the development of Lynwood and Prospect. At the development of Lynwood and Prospect, we bought the old St. Joe Hospital that sit as a blight on our community for a number of years. At one time, it had been the largest hospital in the city. At one time, it had provided medical services, excellent medical services to our community, but they wanted to expand and move, and there was no place that they could move at this location. The housing associations, the neighborhoods did not want to give up their houses, so they ended up moving to 103rd and 103rd State Line. But when they moved to a gentleman by the name of Forrest Tolley, Forrest gutted the building, took all the salvage out of the building, and after taking all the salvage, basically walked away. And we ended up with a blight. I think you may remember when they made the movie called The Day After, which is what happens when a nuclear holocaust hits a city. The ABC director said, after looking all over America, this best represents what a nuclear bomb would do in our city. And they paid us $8,000 a day to shoot the movie at this site, the aftermath of a nuclear holocaust at this site. We took that. It only cost, we're so glad to get rid of this blight that he had created. He sold it to me for $1. And we took that, and I thought I had a great deal. Then I figured out how much it was going to cost to remove the blight, to take that 7-story hospital down. Now, we got lucky in that we were able to bury the hospital in the parking lot of the Lynwood Shopping Center. It's still buried there. But in order to take this on, I needed partners. And the partners I elected, because I got involved with it in the first place by a minister by the name of Reverend Wallace Hartsfield. And it was a selfish move on his part because this blight was next door to his church and he wanted to get rid of it. So he convinced a gentleman by the name of Alec Harris, my brother Elbert Anderson, Maurice Heron. He had all of us sit and look at what we were going to do with this blight. He gave me the challenge of figuring out who owned it. I found out, and like I say, I bought it from Mr. Talley for just $1. But now to remove it, we needed upwards of $1.5 million. So we turned to our city. We had 4 Black council persons at the time and 1 Hispanic councilman. We worked with our council person was Charles Hasley. We worked with Mr. Hasley. Ministers beat up on him pretty good to help us. And I can understand their position. Reverend Cleaver, Charles, Mark Bryant, Joanne Collins, they recognized the fact that we had not had any experience in developing something the size and the magnitude of a shopping center and bringing a grocery store into our community. But that's what we needed at the time. We needed a grocery store. We needed a drugstore. We needed some place where the women in our community could buy clothes and men as well could buy clothes. There was no major shopping center. The closest thing we had to a shopping center in our community at the time was the Landing, and the Landing was starting to go down the tubes. So we were able to convince our Black council persons to help us secure $1 million grant from the city to do the demolition and excavation of the site so that we could do something with it. And the something after doing a study in our community, we already knew what the study was going to say. What do the women of our community want? They all said, we want a shopping center. We want a grocery store. We want to be able to get fresh fruits and vegetables. We don't have access to that right now. So that justified us going after other money to build a shopping center. I was able to go to the Office of Economic Opportunity and pick up a grant at that time for $500,000 to get started. Go to the Kansas City Star, get a grant, $150,000 from the Kansas City Star, well, really from ABC Television, which was the owner of the Kansas City Star. Able to go to Hallmark Cards and get another $150,000. Able to take the site, subdivide it out, and negotiate a deal with the first Popeyes. And we put a Popeyes in there. That got us a $300,000 for selling that site. I got $300,000. Then selling the next site, which was Burger King, got another $300,000, and took all these pots of money, put it together, and had enough equity capital to build the shopping center.
Well, excuse me for breaking in, because that Burger King, I remember going to that opening, Senator Danforth, you had him as one of the primary people. One of the major things at that, because I was going to move in the shopping center, I had the pizza place. One of the major things that really, as far as I was concerned, that you really showed the majority community the economic power of Black people. When I heard that Payless that you put in there, that was the #1 grossing.
Number one Payless shoe store source in the Midwest area. And it was very successful. One, we delivered a Payless store in the heart of a community that needed a Payless shoe source, because that's the kind of money that people, and the kind of shoes that people from our community could afford. And I remember in many instances, I'd see a mother come in there with 6, 7, 8 kids and be able to buy shoes for all of those kids at a reasonable price. So it was a good
My
deal.
kids were coming up, that's where we went.
I mean, most of us, if you look at it, the price points that the shoes were selling for was where we would go.
And
I remember
good shoes.
Yeah, I remember asking my dad for a pair of Converse shoes because I wanted to play basketball when I was in high school. And my dad looked at Converse, they cost $12. He said, no, we're gonna go someplace where we can get 2 pair of tennis shoes for $5. And I argued with him, but I need Converse. Yeah, no, if you can't play basketball with these shoes, you won't be playing.
Get some Skippies.
And that's kids. I think I had kids or something like that. But with the shopping center, it gave us an opportunity to bring some tenants into our community that had goods and services that were essential for our community. I was able to do a good year. I ended up brokering a deal with Michael Smith, a young man who was working for his father at the time at the service station, and he was unhappy working for his father. So we were able to put him in business in a good year. And that's something my brother and myself decided we would capitalize and do. We were able to get a Rexall drugstore. One store I didn't want to open. I did not want to work with a lady, an elderly lady who wanted to own a Christian bookstore. It was called Christian Book Nook. And I discriminated against her. I refused to work with her. She went to the ministers who were my partner. I had 31 churches as my business partner, 17 Black entrepreneurs as business partners. We had to do all this to raise enough capital to have the equity necessary to get the banks to work with us. Okay, I discriminated against her by not wanting to talk to her because I didn't think she'd be successful. She went to the ministers who she had a great relationship with because she'd been selling all of them their Christian paraphernalia. They beat up on me real bad, so we put her in, gave her a 1,700 square foot space that evolved into a 4,500 square foot space. I had no idea that Christian materials would sell the way they were selling in our community. She had found a gold mine. We later got criticized by a lot of local entrepreneurs for saying, you got large stores, there's no place for us. We need 2,000, we need 1,500, 2,000, 3,000 square foot spaces. You don't have none of that. So went back to the Office of Economic Opportunity, made a challenge, worked a deal to get $1 million to get started on the development of Lynwood Square, which was an incubator, was born as an incubator to see whether or not we could have an all-Black shopping center in the heart of our community. We're successful in putting it up, successful in renting all the space. We had 20, we started out with 20 stores in the heart of our community, Black stores. But as the minority entrepreneurs started to fail, we replaced them with majority tenants, AAA tenants, because they had to do something to stabilize the income of the shopping center. Now, both of those shopping centers in the last 4 years, I've been able to come back. I retired, and I was able to come back and buy those shopping centers and redo them. The one shopping center, Lynwood Shopping Center, was able to get into a partnership with the city. The city put $17 million up for me to work with in the development of the shopping center. Bring in a brand new grocery store, change everything up, come in with a first-class operation. And I'm happy to say that we're 100% occupied and we're doing very well. We lost one tenant, which was Gen X, no problem. We just signed a contract with Arvest Bank. So we're bringing Arvest Bank to that spot. They'll start in June. We're working with Arvest to tear down their facility and build a brand new facility, but it's going to take at least 2 years. So for the next 2 years, Arvest will operate from the west side of the street where the old Gen X space used to be. 2 years from now, hopefully we give birth in the Lynwood Square Shopping Center, which my son and I own, which is directly across the street. They will become, their operation will exist there. Now we're putting up some large ATM machines on the east side of the street now, where the bank is located right now. There'll still be ATM machines, so people who are used to doing business with Arvest can continue to do that at that site, okay? But we'll have temporary bank on the west side of the street. As we went along and continue to do, I go to Palestine Baptist Church, and my pastor did me wrong. The pastor put me on Front Street in front of the congregation and insisted and asked the church for a vote. I said, don't we want Maxwell to build us a housing complex? And I said, Reverend, I can't make no money building a housing complex for the church. He said, the Lord is telling you that this is what you're going to do.
That was Reverend Abel.
Yeah, Reverend Abel.
Boy, I miss him.
We all do. But the challenge came, so we built a 60-unit housing complex called Palestine Gardens. It's located at 33rd and Prospect. We've always stayed 100% occupied. Later, because of the success of Palestine Gardens, Reverend Abel gave out the challenge to, I need you to do the second one. So we built another housing project called Palestine North, which is another 60-unit housing complex for elderly. It's 202. Got HUD to finance it. And each one of those deals, HUD gave me $15 million. We were able to leverage another $3 million to do those developments, mainly from the city and other foundations, so that we didn't just build a brick facility. We put gingerbread on it. We wanted to have common spaces that allow our seniors to do the kind of things they wanted to do. I even moved my mama in to Palestine Gardens, which was probably a big mistake because my mama became the enemy. She started organizing on me. We want larger, big screen televisions. We want kitchen. I said, Mama, you can't do the thing that Reverend Abel came and challenged me on. He said, Don, you got to talk to your mama. I said, why is that? Your mama's got the casino bus coming to the senior citizen center, picking them up and going down to the casino. said, well, Rev, you know my mama longer than I have, so you go deal with her.
So when
Yeah, the next project we did with the church was the Senior Activity Center. We built the new Senior Activity Center at the corner of 34th and Prospect, with all the kind of activities that our seniors could dream of to put in there. And this was, again, the foresight of Reverend Abel. He just used me as the developer to do it, but it was a partnership between Palestine and the Community Development Corporation. And that project has been very successful. We still operate with over 1,000 members from the immediate neighborhood. We do all kinds of social service things for our seniors. We feed about 300 seniors a day. We're getting ready to start doing something that my goal is to get up to 3,000 meals provided in our neighborhood using the activity center for that. We're gonna go to frozen meals, which will allow us to do even more. As we were doing this development, I left something out. I continued to be an entrepreneur, independent entrepreneur. And my brother and I had the opportunity to get a contract with the federal penitentiary, where we had a pre-release center, like I'll say a customized, large halfway house.
Yeah, that's Reverend Fisher. Didn't he work for you?
Yeah, I had Burvin Fisher work for me there. Maurice Heron was our warden. And we built a nice program. We kept 155 prisoners a day at that location. And the feds used to pay us something like about $125 a day per prisoner. And so it got to be very lucrative. We ended up taking our contract though and subbing our contract to an Indiana firm who had experience in doing that. But it was lucrative because we could make about $30,000 a month doing that project. We're making so much money though, had to figure out what we were going to do with it. So my brother and I decided to open up a radio station. We weren't getting the cooperation from KPRs we wanted. So we said, we open up our own radio station. And so that's what we did. We ran a KCXL. I think we were in existence about 8 years with KCXL before we end up selling KCXL. We also end up opening up, I mentioned the Goodyear Service Station. The Goodyear Service Center. We also ended up opening the first Black-owned Chevrolet dealership in Kansas City, Celebrity Chevrolet. That was at Independence Avenue and the Paseo. That was another very something new to our community. We never had a Black Chevrolet dealer in Kansas City.
The first Black car dealership in Kansas City was down on 18th and Vine. I mean, in the United States.
19th and Vine.
19th and Vine. Yeah. All right, well, you know.
19th and Vine. Yeah, Mrs. Rucker and her husband financed that deal.
Rector?
Sarah Rucker.
You knew Joe, the great grandson.
Yeah, you see, Joe ran 12th Street Heritage. We were partners. Charles Hasley made BEU, CDC, 12th Street, who else was it? Oh, Bob Brim. He made all four of us work together. I didn't really want to work with him because my organization was so much larger. And Charles said, well, you're getting a grant of about $300,000 a year from the city. If you don't want to work with them, I just divide that money up with them. I said, I work with them, you know.
Hey, man, you know one thing, I like keeping it real on all my shows. Mm-hmm. You and Charles, bam, but y'all were able to work together, and that's what I don't see now. I'm saying.
Yeah, we banged heads all the time. Charles and I we were always disagreeing, but we agreed on what ought to happen in the community. And he respected my skill to develop and would guarantee me the money from the city. He did a fantastic job.
Charles was
because
a
he had 5
bulldog.
votes.
He was a bulldog.
He really was.
I know when I came, he gave me a name. Every time I came around, he was like, "Here comes Static Man."
Well. And many of the projects that we had to do, I had to go to the city. I was very successful in getting money out of the federal government to do these projects I'm talking about. But usually the federal government wanted to know what kind of local support and participation you were going to have. And I used the city for that support. And Charles was the conduit for making that happen. If it made sense to him, he would support it. If it didn't make sense, though, he'd tell you straight out, I ain't gonna support it.
In closing, what would you have to say to our audience?
Well, what I've tried to do is make a difference in our community. One of my best friends was a knucklehead that I grew up with by the name of Bernard Powell. And Bernard had a saying, ghetto or gold mine, the choice is yours. And what those pictures represent is the fact that we can create a gold mine in the heart of our community by taking broken places. And often we have to use worn out tools to do it, but we have the opportunity to clean up our own community. And that's what it represents. Those are organizations and people and business partners that I've had to work with, all from the Black community. We did it. And those only represent some of the projects we were able to do. When I retired, we had 101, we had capitalized over 101 small minority enterprises in the Kansas City area. So I'm grateful to the Black community of Kansas City for supporting me in all my endeavors over all these years.
I think that's appropriate, Don. As I told you, from my perspective, and I don't be sucking up or giving too many props, you the godfather on this development scene here in Kansas City. I don't think there's any other Black person that can match what you've done for the community. And as I say, you don't have to like a person or what have you, but you do need to acknowledge people in our community that have done things to make our community a much better place to live in and give us more access to more resources. And so, as we say, first, let me steal Jim Watts's line. When he's on the show, he's always saying, it's a plum pleasing pleasure to have you on, Don. But my closing, and is similar to Bernard Powell's ghetto or gold mine. When you invest in your community, you're really just investing in yourself. Good night.
That's right. We're taking people out of the pot of poverty and moving them into the mainstream of economic opportunity. That becomes important.
The program is brought to you by the Kansas City Business Association.